Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Chat EbT. I'm your host, Ebrahim Tayob. So today we are joined with a rising star in the South African sports world. Please help me in welcoming Dylan Naidoo.
Thanks for having me, Mohammed.
No, it's our pleasure, Dylan. Thank you so much for being here. So I'm very excited today because one of my greatest passions is the game of golf. Although I'm pretty horrible at it, but it's still, I always maintain that golf is the greatest sport that's ever played. So very, very excited to have somebody that does this every day as a living. Sorry, I'm fanning out a little bit here, but it's such a pleasure having you on, man.
Thanks for having me. No, I'm looking forward to it.
Right, so let's jump right in, right? The South African Open. What an amazing accomplishment, being the first South African player of color to win the SA Open. How much did that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, growing up, it's one of those tournaments that is on your bucket list as a South African to win, hopefully one day. You hear people talk about their national opens and put it in the same breath as major championships, and that's kind of how we feel about the South African Open and how I feel about the South African Open. And honestly, I didn't actually realize until after the tournament that I was the first player of color to win this tournament. So I think that maybe didn't put that extra pressure on myself beforehand. So it was a very special moment in my golfing career that I think I'll look back on for the rest of my life.
No, that's amazing. And I mean, one of the things that I've always found very interesting is the playoff, right? So obviously, you won the SA Open in a playoff, right? It's a grueling couple of days. Okay, yes, it was shortened due to weather. But after 54 holes, how much does it take for you to say, I got to go out and play a few more holes?
Yeah, I think it was a very special situation that we found ourselves in. Obviously with all the rain, I didn't know at the end of day 3 that would be the final stroke that I made on Saturday before the playoff. And I missed kind of a shortish putt on the last hole that would have given me the outright win without having to play the playoff. And so we're kind of sitting and stewing around, watching the weather come down, and the rain just kept coming and coming and coming. And I kind of expected us to have to come back on Monday to do the playoff.
Yeah.
That's how bad the rain was, Eventually they said, no, we're calling the day off because of the rain. And I kind of was getting ready to go, and they said, no, we're having the playoff today.
Oh, wow.
And so they took out the squeegees and squeegeed off the 18th hole. And yeah, I mean, it looked perfect when we got there, but obviously there was a crazy amount of rain that had fallen before that. So it was a very specific situation that we found ourselves in, Now, because it's a playoff, I'm either going to be finishing first or second in the golf tournament. And before this tournament, earlier on in the DP World Tour season, I'd finished second in Mauritius. At this stage, I had no category on the DP World. I wasn't a player on the DP World Tour. I was playing on the Sunshine Tour and the South African Tour. And because of my second place in Mauritius, and now subsequently either finishing second or first in this event at the SA Open, I knew going into the playoff that I would have playing rights on the DP World Tour the following season.
Okay.
I'd earned enough points to keep my card for the next year, right? And so that was kind of a moment that just took a little bit of pressure. It eased the pressure for me massively, because no matter what, my life isn't really going to change depending on what happens in this playoff. Before going into the final round, if I had finished 10th, I wouldn't have made enough points, to get onto the DP World Tour the next season. So it was that just kind of freed me up a little bit to go, okay, well, we're now here just to win this golf tournament. My life's kind of set for the next year, whether or not I win this tournament or not. And obviously, having won the event, I get this season on the DP World Tour rather than just starting from the next season.
Oh, that's amazing, man. We spoke a little bit about you being the first player of color, right? One other name that we always associate with South African players of color is, of course, Papua, right? How much of an inspiration was he on you and on your career? And knowing that he obviously didn't get the opportunity to play in the SA Open, but won the Natal Open, was that going through your mind at all? Yeah.
I think it really didn't occur to me while I was playing. But the narrative was kind of building throughout the week when I was in contention. I was asked about Papua at Durban Country Club. And for me, it was Papa's story has been something that has been a part of my golfing career from when I've started. My dad has always told me the story, and it's always a part of us as players of color in South Africa. You know, when we saw that SA Open was going to be hosted at Durban Country Club, there were quite a number of us who had circled that on the calendar as something that's like, you know, super crazy important to us, you know. And I still find it, like, even just talking about it now, it still is, it's so amazing that I managed to win it there. Because that is just like the perfect story of what's happened in South African golf, coming full circle and being able to win this golf tournament, you know. And so, yeah, his story has always, it's rung very, very clear for me throughout my golf career.
No, I can imagine. And I'm sure it must have been just, as you mentioned, right? It's not only are you winning this for yourself, you're winning it for all the other people of color that maybe at one stage weren't allowed to play in these tournaments. Maybe at one stage didn't think they were good enough to play in these tournaments. But yeah, I'm sure, like you said, at the time, didn't really register, but I'm sure after the tournament, that sort of started sinking in.
For sure. I mean, I got so many messages of congratulation that really felt so much more personal than what I've experienced before in my life, you know. It felt like I made that putt with however many people behind me cheering me on and wanting me to succeed, and it felt like we had made the putt together almost, you know. I mean, some of the articles that people wrote literally like brought me to tears, how beautiful the story was. And it sometimes you almost forget that it's my story. It feels like it's a different person, like the way that people have described it and made it so poetic, and you're like, okay, well, like, I wish it was only this beautiful and this amazing, and that all the bad times have just, you know, led to this amazing moment. But it really felt like such a special moment in my life, and for other people too.
No, I can imagine. And now, you know, you always hear those stories of the people that were exceptional golfers, right? And we hear of golf just being such a difficult market to break into. You know, joining the Sunshine Tour is something that is years of dedication, years of hard work. What would you say is the key difference between that, I'm a scratch golfer, brilliant, to I'm a tour player?
I think there's a lot. I think I've seen it going around it. I tend to agree with it. I'd say a scratch golfer is probably about 8 shots worse than a tour player.
Oh wow!
Yeah. I think that's. I think the difference between a scratch golfer and a tour pro is, first of all, the ability of the golfer. I mean, I'd say most tour pros, when they do turn pro, are probably +5, +6 handicaps, like really, really good players already. But from there, you get a group of guys who turn pro, and they're definitely good enough already to play professional golf, but are they ready for the rigors of what professional golf has with it? You know, the travel, the being away from home, playing new golf courses, adapting every single week. It's a lot. It's not easy. And I think Sunshine Tour is great. But again, we're traveling almost exclusively in South Africa.
Yeah.
And so you have weeks where you can come back home in between, and that's great. Being on the European Tour this year has been such a eye-opener for me, and it's been a really, you know, I've kind of had to take it in my stride and learn a lot at the same time.
Now, one thing that I've always been fascinated about is the player-caddy relationship. What do you think is the most important thing that your caddy brings for you?
I think he brings a level of enjoyment to the game. Myself and my caddy's name is Dylan Naidoo. He's a really good friend of mine, and we've now been working together for about a year and a bit. He is more of a friend than he was before we started. Like, he just happened to be available, and we decided that we're going to have a professional relationship too, you know, as a caddy player. And he's been great. I think his understanding of me makes it a lot easier for me to go play golf. He knows that I'm quite a technical guy, and I need those walking of the golf course, those pin positions, those tee box positions, the strategy around that. I need that all to be super clear. And once we have that, then golf can be a little bit more like aim there and hit there, you know? I think I can get a little bit too involved in my golf game, in the sense that I want to control everything. I want to control the smallest aspect of every part of my game, and that's just not a good way to play good golf. You need to be able to have that freedom to go, no, I trust myself, I trust my caddy, I trust what we're doing here, I trust the decision that we've made, and I can just go hit it, you know? And he gives that to me in a way that I don't think a lot of other caddies would be able to.
No, that's amazing. Because you've heard these stories about how in these really clutch moments in tournaments, it was the caddy that actually sort of calmed the player down in those really big scenarios, you know, bringing them a little bit back down to earth.
For sure.
Into that situation, calming the nerves, so on and so forth.
I mean, when we were at the SA Open on that final chip shot, I was kind of sitting on a slight uphill lie, and I was a little bit worried that I wasn't going to be able to flight it low enough to get it to pop up over the slope. And he was like, okay, well, we have placing, let's place it a little bit further back where it's a bit flatter, and then you're going to get the flight. And I was like, yeah, that's for sure. Like, that's a big difference.
Didn't occur to you at that time.
It wasn't like my first thought. You know, I was thinking, okay, maybe I can try and like trap it a little bit more and hit it a bit lower. And he was like, no. The most logical thing to do is just go a couple steps back, and we can hit the shot exactly the way we want it to be. And I was like, yeah, well, perfect. You know, and those are the small things that people don't really see, that someone like Shan has been just so positive for me.
No, that's brilliant. A bit of an out there question, but has there ever been a scenario where you just did not agree with his club selection or shot selection, and how did you manage that?
For sure, and it happens more frequently than you would think, you know. And at the end of the day, I am the person in charge. I need to have complete clarity over the shot and belief in what we're trying to do. And you know, I'm working a lot with my mental coach, with Shan, together on the process that we build before hitting a golf shot. And right now we're at about, let's say, 70% me and 30% him. And love Shan. Shan's great for me. It needs to be 80-20. I need to have even more responsibility on the shot. For certain other guys, it needs to be the other way around. Someone, you know, just needs to listen completely to the caddy and just listen completely to the information, and the caddy tells them the club and they just hit the shot. And I'm just not built that way, and that's just not how I play my best golf. But you know, we've had disagreements over clubs, and the best thing to do is immediately say, hey, Shan, I think we got a crap club there, mate. I'm not happy with that. And he'll say, yeah, maybe you just didn't hit it great. Or, oh, well, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, we made a mistake there. And just like own up to it. No one's going to make perfect decisions every single time. This is it's golf. It's played on grass. Like, we're not on a spreadsheet, you know. So there are going to be mistakes that are made. But if I feel comfortable enough to express, like, I'm not entirely happy with the process there. If I'm happy with the process, and whatever, the wind switched or the lie hasn't behaved the way we expect it to be, it is what it is. That's the game of golf. I can't blame someone else if I'm thinking along the same lines and we have the same ideas, you know?
Yeah.
There are times where he will, you know, give me an input and it will change my decision, and then I'll feel a little bit aggrieved afterwards. And that's when I'll say, Shan, I don't think we went through a good process there.
Yeah.
You know? So,
but again, it comes back to that trust, right?
Yeah, for sure.
No, brilliant. You mentioned there the mental game, right? You mentioned you work with a mental coach. As I mentioned, I've always been fascinated with that aspect of the game. Why do you think the mental coaching and mental game has become such a forefront in golf? Because you're hearing about it more and more often now. I think, as you mentioned, like 10, 15 years ago, there wasn't much talk about mental golf coaches. But today, it seems like it's sort of a requirement for you to be on tour. It's sort of required for you to have a mental golf coach.
I would say so. I think especially on the DP World Tour, you see it so frequently. You know, I think again, the rigors of professional golf, it's kind of this roller coaster ride, and you need someone to help you kind of navigate the waters, as I was, you know, in my first season on the DP World Tour now. And to be able to have that voice to, you know, shape the conversation in a certain way, to shape your thinking in a certain way, is really important. Because you can easily just hit panic mode and go, oh, I'm not happy with this, I'm not happy with my clubs, I'm not happy with my coach. And because you have access to everything, it's super easy to change everything if you wanted to. And that's probably not for the best to change everything. The goal is to keep, things as consistent as possible, use the data that you have, use the stats that you have, and, maybe alter course fractionally rather than do a complete 180. And to have my coach and my mental coach have such a close relationship, I think that's important too.
Yeah, definitely.
They need to know what each other is working on. In the same way, my caddy needs to have a good relationship with the coach and mental coach too. So it's been really great to see those connections being super, super forged this year.
Oh, amazing. You mentioned again the European tour, right? Now, obviously, apart from the traveling and the not knowing the courses, as you mentioned, can you explain to us, because there is quite a jump between the Sunshine Tour and the European Tour.
For sure.
Right? What's that big differentiator between the Sunshine Tour and the European Tour?
I think it's a bigger pool of players, right? It's a bigger pool of guys who are fantastic golfers. The money is better, so you're going to attract better players. You're going to attract a larger strength of players throughout the field, essentially. Like, I think our Sunshine Tour, the top 10 to 15 is very, very, very good. But we kind of have a slight fall off on the back half in terms of the strength of our fields. That's completely natural. The best players on our tour, the best South African players are playing on the European Tour, are playing on the on the PGA Tour. So I think there is a clear gap between the DP World and Sunshine Tour in terms of the strength of fields. The quality of courses, we play some good courses in South Africa, and then we play some slightly poorer courses in South Africa too. And that's just the nature of our tour.
Yeah.
I'm on the players committee on the Sunshine Tour. There's nothing wrong with us playing some of the slightly smaller courses in some of the more rural areas in South Africa. I think it's great for the communities. I think it grows golf in all our different areas of the country. But in terms of the actual quality of some of those courses, you would never host a DP World Tour event on that course. And it's just a difference.
Yeah, fair point.
I think that most South Africans are quite individualized when it comes to coaching. There's kind of 4 or 5 good coaches in South Africa, and you tend to see one of those 4 or 5 good coaches. We don't really spread our wings any further than South Africa in terms of coaching. I've been really fortunate to have a great team of guys who are randomly all French. I have no affiliation with France, but it's just happened to be that way.
Yeah.
And you see it on the DP World Tour. You have a lot of guys who are using these international coaches who are really, really good at their job. Not to say the South African coaches are not. You have quite a number of them who I see on the DP World Tour too. But I think Europeans and international players tend to embrace this team aspect a little bit more than South Africans do.
No, I can imagine. And as you mentioned, it's obviously, you mentioning the top 10 being really the cream of the crop.
Yes.
Where unfortunately, when you go to the European Tour, it's top 200.
Yes,
really
yes.
Are the cream of the crop. There.
Correct, yeah.
And in terms of being an actual player, right? So obviously, we're hearing of these next level greats. We spoke about Tiger Woods, and I think today it's Scotty Scheffler. Just being on that different level, Rory McIlroy, so on and so forth. What's the difference between guys on the PGA Tour, European Tour, that are competing, that are in that level, winning as well, but then that next level of a Scotty Scheffler?
I think it's a very boring answer. I don't think it's as mythical as what people think. I think it's the consistency of what they do over a span of a golf tournament. I think guys who have won smaller events on the European Tour are just as good in their best shots as Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah.
His worst shots are just a lot better than other people's worst shots. I think he's an unbelievable putter. I think Rory is not credited enough for being a really, really good putter.
Yeah.
And I think the quality of ball striking is high, but over the course of a tournament is where you see it properly. If you were to just look at the highlights package of a guy who finishes 100th on the DP World Tour compared to Scotty Scheffler, I think they would look not that far apart. But it's the medium golf, it's the low lights golf that are much more at the same level as their highest golf, if that makes sense.
No, that does. And I think that's pretty much, I love the way you put that. His worst shots are just better.
Yes.
So the game of golf has also turned a little bit into a business, right? There's a very business element behind it. And I think a lot of people don't see that. How do you manage that aspect? I mean, dealing with sponsors, dealing with all the other things that go in endorsements, so on and so forth. How do you deal with all of that?
I think it's a part of the game that was not, on my radar when I turned pro even. I really love the game of golf, and I love doing this for a living, and I'm happy that it pays me well, because then it makes it a little bit easier to enjoy playing the game of golf. I'm really thankful to have such a great management team around me. Anders Davidson from Progressive Sports and Entertainment, he's my manager, and he's been so influential in making sure that I get the deals that I deserve to get. As a player, to negotiate that stuff is impossible. You need to have a good person around you. I think many golfers are willing to not have a manager and willing to do it themselves. And then when it comes time at the negotiation table, you just have no real leverage to be able to ask for what you actually want. I have a great sponsor and mentor in Kinesh Patha from Innovi as well, who's been such an important person in bringing Anders in and bringing this team of people around me from that business perspective. And to have ABSA on board through winning the South African Open, it's a very full circle moment for me, because my dad worked for ABSA for a long time. So it was ABSA was always part of my life, and now I'm very proud to be able to wear them on my chest.
No, that's excellent. You mentioned the money aspect, right? I was watching an interview once, and one of the players brought up the fact that sometimes when you're standing over a putt, that putt, whether you sink it or miss it, could be the difference in a few 100,000 rand, right? Does that ever cross your mind when you're standing on that putt, that, hey, this putt is the difference between first and second and third? The pot is obviously this much difference between first and second and third. Does that ever cross your mind when you're actually standing over that?
For sure. I think it's something that's important to acknowledge as a pro golfer, that money is going to come and go, actually, when you're playing pro golf. You spend a lot of money, and hopefully you make a lot of money too. Looking at yourself as a business is something that I'm still, it's not the most comfortable space for me to be in as a business, Dylan Naidoo, the business, but I need to look at, okay, when I have these performances throughout the season, this is the pool of money I have available to me that I need to use for my travel to and from events, for my accommodation, etc. And what does a year of playing on the European Tour look like for me as a player versus a year on the Sunshine Tour? What did that look like for me as a player? And that's still a part of myself that I'm having to cultivate, that business side of myself. But it's something that I think you need to grow into as a golfer, that prize money is prize money, and it's exponential. Like finishing 20th and finishing 10th, there is an increase, but finishing third and finishing second is a much bigger increase in the pot. And either way, you're trying to play the best possible golf that you can. You're trying to shoot the lowest possible score that you can. So what is the point in thinking about that while you're playing golf?
No, that's a good point. Yeah, 100%. We have a tradition here on the podcast where the last guest leaves a question for the next guest, not knowing who they are or what they do, right? Your question that's been left for you is, who has inspired you the most on your journey?
That's a good question. I think it's been if it's one person, I would say my dad. He has just stood by me no matter what, has been a positive influence on me from when I was 10 years old to now. And I am so grateful to have had such a strong man in my life to help guide me along the way.
No, that's brilliant. And I'm going to add to that because I'm just dying to know. If you had to choose a player that's inspired you the most, who would that be?
I think it's a combination of Papua and Tiger. Those are the two people who, we grew up watching Tiger and watching his greatness, and to see a person of color on TV, you know, being as great as what Tiger was at a game that was pretty much exclusively white at that stage.
Yeah.
You know, him and Vijay Singh were
Yeah.
the two who were, you know, up there. It was very special to grow up in that era and to take inspiration from that greatness.
Perfect. What's next for Dylan? And also, what's the goal? What's the dream?
I think there's a few things in the pipeline. The first thing is at the start of the DP World Tour season, we'll kick off at the Nedbank Golf Challenge coming up, which I'm really excited about. It's going to be that tournament, the Alfred Daniel Championship at Royal Johannesburg,
Yeah.
and then Afrasia Bank Mauritius Open to finish the year. So that's going to be the start of the 2026 season. So really looking forward to that. And the goal is to get a PGA Tour card through the DP World Tour. The top 10 players who don't already have PGA Tour cards on the DP World Tour get PGA Tour cards at the end of the season. And you got to golf your ball and you got to play extremely well, but that's where I want to be at the end of the year.
And sort of ultimate goal, is it playing again in the Open? Is it walking down Augusta? What's the ultimate golf goal?
The goal is to become the #1 golfer in the world. The goal is to win a major and to be the #1 golfer in the world. And then I can say I won my National Open and I won a major, and I think I can retire after that.
Brilliant. I love it. That's excellent. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have this call with you when you do that. And I'm going to say, Dylan, I remember we had this conversation and you said you wanted to retire.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you ain't nowhere done yet. And you're going to say 100%. I'm pretty sure I'm going to put that in my notes to make sure I make that call.
There we go.
You do host that major. No, but that's brilliant. Dylan, I can't tell you what a pleasure it's been. As I said, I'm such a fan of you and the sport, and I can't wait to see what you do next. We'll be watching your journey. Best of luck on the next season. We really hope that it's everything that you dream about. And yeah, we look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. All right, that's our show. Once again, a brilliant interview where we discuss mindset, we discuss goals, and that drive to perfection. My name is Ebrahim Tayob, and you're watching Chat EbT. Until next time.